Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker, the expansion, provides a strong narrative with good moments and characters, successfully wrapping up 10 years of storytelling for the Hydaelyn and Zodiac story. The expansion offers strong and engaging gameplay through instances and dungeons and trials and the like, you get it, but sometimes can falter from the moment-to-moment gameplay, as well as some pacing issues towards the end. We're here to tell you more about that. This is Daryl.
And this is Dion, and this is Where We Stand. Let's talk a little bit about our experience with Final Fantasy. So I've been playing Final Fantasy on and off since the alpha, actually. I played the alpha, the beta. I was really into it, really excited when the game was first releasing. I was, big Final Fantasy fan.
You're talking about 1.0,
really into
right?
it. 1.0, yes. So I was a big Final Fantasy fan at the time. I still am, still play all the games. And I really love the idea of an online game. Past Final Fantasy 11, I missed the era of Final Fantasy 11, so this is really cool for me. I was mostly casual just because of time available. I was in college at the time, but I did engage in some Savage content, which is some of the raiding in Final Fantasy. For the first tier of Heavensward, I did do it. My computer kind of burned up, and then I stopped. And I never got back into raiding, but I did, for a little bit, right? And then I skipped the Shadowbringers expansion until 5.3, and I completely skipped Stormblood and got back into that actually after Daryl encouraged us to get into it. I did push that, didn't I? Yeah. You did push that. And I kind of stopped for a little bit, and I was like, well, the problem for me was it's very consistent, but it gets very similar over time the more you play. So that's kind of what happened for me. I did play through Endwalker that we're going to talk about today, and I did a lot of the in-game raids and trials. I did some of the harder versions of the trials. I think it's hard mode or savage mode. Don't remember the name.
Extreme.
I did some of the trials. Extreme. That's what it is.
I think it's the extreme trials. Yeah.
I had extreme trials, so I did a little bit of the extreme trials. I did some of the normal raids, which is very much puggable. So that's kind of where I'm coming from in this review.
In my case, the first time I played Final Fantasy XIV was maybe like a year or two after Dion played it. Like I remember correctly, I was in the middle, I think, I was in between Terra and Guild Wars 2. At the time, I was looking for a home MMO to play, even though I don't really play MMOs all that often and whatnot. And I remember asking Dion, hey, Dion, I heard about Final Fantasy XIV. Should I play that? And remind you, this is the 1.0 version. He said, don't. It's shit. I remember that. And
It was.
Admittedly, yeah. Even Yoshi P himself was like, the fuck is this? Before he, killed it. And, the story. But by the time 2.0, aka Realm Reborn, came around, me and Dion and some friends of ours, we all played the, I think it was like a extended free trial for like 3 months. I remember because it was that summer. We were all in college at the time. And that was around like 2014, 2015-ish. And then for a while, I just didn't play anymore because I wasn't in the position for like a subscription model to like hop on that. I didn't have a job yet and this and the other, so I couldn't reliably pay for it. And when I did get one, Final Fantasy was the last thing on my mind. It wasn't until around Shadowbringers that I decided, okay, I'm seeing a lot of ads and commercials for this. All of a sudden, I remember the Tom Holland one specifically, and then I was like, okay, fine. Yeah, I'll come back, I guess. Especially since some people at one of my jobs back in the day had recommended, yeah, play some Final Fantasy XIV. But since then, I've been hooked. And it's become my one of the games I play the most, MMO-wise. If I want a more casual experience, I go to BDO, but otherwise, 14 is my main shtick. I'm also mostly casual. I've done some rating, just not high-tier rating, but I'm hoping that changes sometime soon. But in my case, when I started playing, I dedicated like a lot of time to it. So I didn't really jump around all that much. I kind of just said, okay, I'm playing Heavensward, took a break for like 2 months. Played Stormblood, took a break for like a month, because by then we were getting into Shadowbringers, and then once I hit Shadowbringers, I'm like, more. And that's my story with Final Fantasy 14.
Yes, and I'm trying to push you in a rating, but you haven't even played in the last few weeks, right?
No, I've actually been playing consistently.
Okay, so
but it's mostly been grinding and leveling and helping out my coworkers with getting through Endwalker themselves. But no, I play relatively consistently. It's just that now that we have other games that we're playing, it takes more of a backseat.
Agreed. Let's move into narrative. So the narrative of this game is absolutely strong. Since Shadowbringers was ridiculously good, and Endwalker just continues that, that's not normal. Usually, you have a good expansion, bad expansion, good expansion, bad expansion, and this is not the case. Endwalker, I really enjoyed the story overall. For you, how did you feel about the overall experience of the story?
I often describe, when people ask me about, like, hey, how'd you feel about Shadowbringers compared to Endwalker, for example, I tell them that's kind of a hard comparison to make, because if I look at Shadowbringers by itself, not Shadowbringers, if I look at Endwalker by itself, it's strong, but not nearly as strong as Shadowbringers. But if I look at it as the equivalent of, say, Endgame for the MCU, then yeah, it's great, because it ties everything together. Nothing really feels like left off, like loose end. It's a very satisfying conclusion. And I think that's just how it is when you have an expansion that ends a 10-year story.
True.
And whatnot.
True.
So I thought it was great. I thought the whole story was great. Definitely had some feels in there. I swear I did not cry, but there were times when I wanted to.
Yes, I agree with that. And, let's talk a little bit about the delivery of the story. For me, I really like the voice cutscenes. I wish they did more, and I understand. I fully.
Strangely enough, this one had the most.
It had the most. It definitely had a lot, and it was longer, right? So it definitely had more, but I still want it. I still want more, and I still want some of the side stuff. Like they did the role quest, where that was supposed to conclude some of the stories with the leaders of each country, and I didn't enjoy those as much because I didn't get the voice acting. I wasn't as engaged, and I haven't even finished one, to be honest with you. So
I finished 2 of them, and I can admit that, yeah, the lack of voice acting in those, if it's like a side story that's like, hey, here are these people you've never really heard about and whatnot, I don't care how important it is. I'm fine with those not being voiced to some extent. But when you have major characters like Merleweb, when you have like Connie Senna, Raban, Emmerich, I'm like, if they're not voiced sometimes, much like the main cast, like the Scions in them, but are voiced other times, that would have been fine. But there was some major stuff that happened there that I'm like, I really wish this was voiced. Mm-hmm. And that's saying something coming from me, who normally doesn't care either one way or the other. But this was some important stuff in those role quests. I'm like, I would have liked that. That would have been cool. But all in all, I thought the role quests were definitely satisfying this time around. Right now, at this moment, I'm trying to level one of the new classes in Endwalker, Sage, so that I could play the healer role quest. I don't like healing. I realize this now. So, and that's mostly because I suck. So
that makes it hard.
That's a different argument for a different time.
Yeah, no, I did not enjoy the role quest actually so far. I just don't think they provide a very interesting. Like I'm doing the Merleweb one. And it's just not interesting. I
just finished that one recently.
It just isn't interesting to me. I mean, it just seems like I'm going back to 2.0 and But that's my my personal. Let's kind of talk about the start, the middle, and the ending. For me, Endwalker started. It was cool getting into Charlene, right, the new area. I really enjoyed seeing that land. I actually do not like the maps as much as I like them in Shadowbringers, but we'll get to that. I did like the main city, probably equal to the probably equal to the Crystal.
To the Crystarium.
Yeah, the Crystarium, probably equal to the Crystarium. Crystarium was really nice as well. And I like that part of it, where you're getting introduced to there. But otherwise, I think it is a little slow till you get to like maybe the second dungeon, I would say, for me. Do you get any difference for you? Was it slow at all in the beginning?
I think when I walked into it, I expected it to kind of start a little slow. In fact, It did for a bit, and then who am I kidding? It's this this is in the trailer, so I can go, or at least the launch trailer, so I can go ahead and say where that appears. When Hydaelyn, or some version of her, shows up on the boat to speak to you on your way to Sharlayan, or Old Sharlayan, that's when I noticed, okay, I expected it to go slowly, but it feels like narratively they're trying to do a lot at once in the beginning. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of moving pieces, but as you're playing through it, it feels slow. When in reality, there's a lot of stuff that's about to come tunneling down, which is what I was excited for. Because, if you're going to have a start that's essentially building things up over time and whatnot, then I expect to hit the ground running by the time you reach the middle portion, which we know, and we're not going to go into detail about here. You really hit the ground running by the time you were nearly done with your time in Garlemald.
Hard. You hit the running hard. Very hard. And it doesn't slow down, honestly. So it starts off slow, and then when we get to the middle, it starts to, I would even say, oh man, the middle of Garlemald is when I started to really be in there, because it just gets insane during the Garlemald section. Yeah. And I think they did a really good job in the middle. I mean, you're engaged all the way throughout. The middle feels like an ending to a whole expansion, and it's not. You keep going. I thought that was really cool. Like I mean, the way they advertised this game, I thought when we got to the middle section, it felt like that should have been the end. Obviously, I knew it wasn't because of what level I was, but it felt like it should have been the end. And it just, for people who played
it, the part we're talking about.
And it just keeps going. And I really thought they did a good job of really making that middle portion full and exciting. And the payoff from dealing with the start was there, which was very good, I think.
It felt like the start was very much, because a lot of the surprisingly, Endwalker, you would think with how the fact that it's the finale, at least of this 10-year story and whatnot, that they wouldn't be taking the time to be like, hey, let's have some fun moments, let's crack some jokes. You got a lot of jokes and a lot of comedy, like in the beginning, like for the start. Even some peppered in the middle just to offset the very depressing moments.
Which there are many.
And yeah, there are many. And both of those moments don't stop, even by the time you're reaching the near end of the story, if you want to give your opinion on that.
Yeah, so the ending was... I actually... See, let me just start with... It was a very full ending. There's a lot of things happening, and it did go quickly, but the pacing... for me, actually, in the ending and in the middle, so together, were more acceptable for the amount of gameplay you were getting. And it really engaged me. The ending really engaged me. Like, when I started getting to that one spoiler area in the game and started learning about other characters and how, this story began, I was engaged from there on. I was completely in. Like, I was sold. And I was all the way down for whatever was going to happen, and it was so good. I did not like the last zone at all. Mm-hmm. Nor I get what it was trying to do and trying to explain, and all those characters, but I actually did not like how they did that one piece of it. I didn't like. The rest of the ending was so phenomenal. Like, I can forget it.
I can see what you mean by that. Yeah, for me, the ending. After everything that the middle was carrying into the ending, for that final zone and whatnot, or at least I'll say from the second to final-ish zone, I was definitely feeling it. I thought, like, okay, this last zone is going to be something big, something major. And I think, in a way, symbolically, it was there. Definitely. Symbolically, it definitely hit home and stuff like that. But it felt like there was so much, not padding, but build up in like previous zones and whatnot, that by the time you get to the last zone, they might as well just given you a corridor. It just said, there's your target. Go kill it. Just sprint down this hallway and kill them. Like, and I'll preface this by saying that by the time that I finished Endwalker, finished everything in that ending, I got to that zone and finished the expansion all within the same night. So I was playing for like 5 to 6 hours straight. I think it was even like almost like 2 or 3 a.m. by the time I was
I couldn't
done.
do that. That zone was so slow.
I was satisfied, but I would not trade that ending for anything else. But at the same time, I just thought to myself, like, is this because I'm moving really quickly through this portion of the ending, or is it because they deliberately made it so that that it kind of just, the zone is designed mostly as one consistent path leading you to where you need to go versus being a big area that you need to explore. Hell, even this isn't even a spoiler. Even the Aether Currents that you have to collect, most of them are right next to each other. That's how you know that this thing has you going straight forward, essentially. So that last zone could have used some help. Symbolically, it was great, but just to navigate, it's not very interesting. The music was sick as fuck.
Yeah, this music was so good. I think it was. I'm actually going to back you up on this. I agree. I think the last zone. I almost think the last zone was unnecessary in some sense. Like it was. You needed that. You needed the area, but it. I think it dragged out maybe a little bit with introducing characters and stuff in that final area. Though I do understand. You understand why, because you were trying to understand.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I do. I'm on the fence then. Let's push a little bit in the gameplay here. I really want to hit home on the single player story. So I'm going to say this just to start off. I liked Shadowbringers better when it came to the gameplay during the story of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
There were definitely more bombastic moments for Shadowbringers, for instance stuff.
There's just not, like, during the story, there's a lot of running and go here, which Final Fantasy has a lot of during the story mode anyway, right? Like, it always has this. But this was just taken to a whole new level. Like, it's just a lot of running, running to talk to someone, and not a lot of fighting. Or when there is fighting, you go to that purple thing and you just, like, fight one monster. Yeah. That is so weak to me. Like, it is not engaging. If you're not engaged with the story, you're like, it would be very, very boring. If you're engaged with the story, it's better, right? Go
ahead.
I really liked how Shadowbringers did more of the single player instances. In this game, this has the single player instances, but it has very few. They're much more elaborate, and they're longer, and they're more exciting. But there is not enough of them. I love this. The single player instances they should do that like all the time, and I don't know why we don't do that all the time. I can't figure it out. So that's what bothered me the most. I did like some of the other features, like the character following you. I think that was cool. Not implemented the best it could have been, but it was a good add.
In my case, I'm not even gonna counter that because for me, more is always better. In my mind, I would love for more instance opportunities and whatnot to like experience the story in a single player way. Yes, I know you could easily make the argument of, well, it's an MMO, but at that point, don't put the instances in there to begin with if you're going to make that argument.
True.
But it would have been nice to have more moments where you weren't just running from one location to the other. For me, that didn't bother me as much because I'm invested in everything everybody has to say except for NPC number 27. Screw that guy. There's no one actually named NPC 27, but if there is, screw him. I'm one of those people who's like, so long as the story is interesting, I don't care if I haven't actually done anything gameplay wise in a while. But that's to Dion's credit why, if you're interested in the story and whatnot, which they put most of their effort
into,
I'm boldly assuming, into the story. Not saying they didn't put effort into the instance content, because once you got to the instance content, that stuff was great. That there were some fights in there. I'm like, are you sure this isn't a trial? What the fuck?
Yes.
Stop. And it's great. That's why, and we're not. And when we're complaining about this, it's not a thing of, oh, they could have, this sucks. They could have done more. It's like, no, we love this and we want you to do more. It's the opposite.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, to counter that point, just briefly, I mean, Final Fantasy makes single player games, and it has gameplay and story, and they have games with phenomenal both. So I don't understand why Final Fantasy XIV can't have gameplay during the story. It makes no sense to me. That bothers me to no end. It makes it boring at times.
And you can see them to some extent, at least with certain kinds of gameplay, experimenting with that and whatnot. Like Dion mentioning earlier about whoever is with you, the whole follower thing that some Final Fantasies do outside of 14 and whatnot, as well as sometimes when you're exploring an area, sometimes the NPC's like, hey, hop on this mount. We're going to go on a magic carpet ride. I don't want to sing the song because it's copyrighted. You get what I'm talking about. And that's all well and good. So you can see them experimenting with that, but it's one of those moments where I'm like, just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. But again, if you're invested in the story and you're enjoying that, then most of the time you're not even going to notice. So it really just comes down to how itchy your trigger finger is.
I mean, I wouldn't say you wouldn't notice. I notice. I love the story. I'm not engaged in the no.
I personally didn't notice. That's what I'm just saying. I'm just saying it from the perspective of someone who might. For me, I didn't notice. Not until actually not until you pointed it out. I thought about it and I was like,
you don't play. You don't play the game. You literally watch a movie for a lot of it, and that's just how it is, and that's fine. Let's talk about the Dungeon and Trials. I don't know if we have a lot to say about this. They're as amazing as they could be. I mean, I actually don't like the middle one, but other than that one,
the middle dungeon or middle trial.
I don't actually like the trial. I don't like the fight, but I do like the experience. I do, from a dungeon design perspective, right? They're not doing anything new here. It's the same type of design that they've done for years at this point, but they're still phenomenal. I will say, hold on, they're still phenomenal.
I do want to cut you off there. You say it's the same, but I get fucked up as a Dark Knight. We don't have self-sustain people. We don't have. It's not great. Warrior can run through that thing just fine. Paladin just fine. Me, I'm trying to pull wall to wall, and I get my ass handed to me. I want buffs, damn it. I'm going to use this platform. I want buffs.
You don't get buffs. It does. They're still as challenging as they were before. Like, they're the same level of challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so tightly designed. They've designed them so tightly at this point. They're just really cool to do one or two times, and then from there it's just a new dungeon. I do think they did some really good. I do think the dungeons were absolutely phenomenal. They're similar designs, is what I should say. I don't know if you have anything to add there. With that.
No, for the most part, the Dungeons and Trials mechanically were, I'd say they were more of what you expected from like the likes of Shadowbringers, but they definitely lean more on the spectacle, because these trials and these fights, these trials and these dungeons, trials especially, they were big deals before, but considering that this is the end of this story, this tale, these trials, they definitely lean more on the spectacle.
Yeah, and they picked the right fights too. They picked the right characters.
They did.
I really enjoyed how they did the fights and how it happens. Oh, it just reminds me. Whew. Okay. So I do want to bring in one more thing: the design of the world this time around. I did not enjoy the zones as much as Shadowbringers at all. Like they were just not like the Shadowbringer zones were freaking phenomenal, and the Endwalker zones. Charlene is the only one I'm gonna give 10 out of 10. It can't complain. Everything else, I honestly, and it may have just been my own personal flavor, and they had an island area, or the final zone I think is just trash, not fun. I actually like I like a part of it. I like the north end of that area, but I did not enjoy the zones as much personally. I didn't like the design as much this time around.
If I had to give a reasoning for that, and this might sound like it's in their defense, but it's just me mostly analyzing this, it might be because Shadowbringers takes place in a completely different world. So they kind of had to, what color are these trees? They're purple, I guess. They went more. That Shadowbringers, when it came to their world designs, felt a lot more fantasy, as weird as that sounds, than anything that actually is on, in Eorzea or anything like that. So a lot of the stuff in this expansion, with the exception of some of the man-made stuff, like we could name drop it. It was shown off before. Labyrinthos, that's more interesting. That's the most interesting to look at because it's an interesting design for a zone versus the other ones where oh cool, more open fields and whatnot.
Yeah.
They're inspired by various X, Y, and
some of them are
Zs.
cool. The moon is cool. We know we're going to the moon, right?
Oh,
That's on there. That moon is cool.
Spoiler is not made of cheese, unfortunately.
I like the outside. So there is a part of the moon I don't.
The moon
like.
was gorgeous though.
The moon was really good.
The
moon was really good.
But the reason the moon was awesome is because you're not on fucking planet that I will not name.
Eorzea, hashtag Eorzea is the problem, and we just need to get out of there.
Which, who knows? We don't know where the story is going to go at this point. It's a fresh new tale that's coming up now, so we'll see what happens.
Oh, yeah.
I'm definitely on board. I'm interested. It's just, we gotta wait. Now,
yes, sir.
Take care of any stuff that you hadn't taken care of before, old raids or trials or stuff you might have skipped before. Grab your old mounts and whatnot. Do that thing that people do between expansions.
Agreed.
Until the next story drop, which probably be in the next 4 months, 5.
4 probably. It's a little longer after an expansion, so maybe 4 or 5. You're right.
Yeah, probably.
So, I think it's time to give our final thoughts on Final Fantasy.
This video was a lot more long-winded, but it's our first video of 2022. Welcome everybody. So, I'm gonna give the excuse there for that.
Yes, and it's a long game. So,
long game too. Lot to talk about that we couldn't get in as much detail about. If we did, this video would be an hour long, I guarantee you.
So for me, Final Fantasy Endwalker makes 2 phenomenal expansion stories in a row. Don't know how they did it, but they did it. The narrative remains engaging throughout and provides closure for your adventure as a Scion. Great time. From a gameplay perspective, I'm hoping that moving forward we get a little more engaging moment-to-moment gameplay. Right now, it's very story-driven, and that bothers me. I want something to do. Am I playing a game? I want to be engaged as well as enjoy the story. There should be some more action. And I would love a push on the single-player instances. That would solve it for me. If we just got a single-player instance every hour, I think I would be in. So that's my final thoughts. Daryl?
Fair enough. Endwalker continues the trend of great storytelling. I know that, Stormblood is divisive, but hey, I liked it despite my problems with the pacing and its bloat. Gameplay-wise, it definitely felt like they went for more quality over quantity. Like they didn't want to overload you, if possible, with a bunch of smaller stuff. They wait for the grand moments to really pull out the stops. So in this sense, they focus a lot more on the major instances that take place with major characters, dungeons, trials, and stuff like that. The usual. But overall, like I said before, I'm very much looking forward to what comes next. Endwalker is definitely, for me, if I had to give it a rating, a 10 out of 10 expansion. Great conclusion.
Don't know about 10 out of 10, but, that's Daryl's.
Yeah, it's mine.
Alrighty, I think that's all we got for now. Thank you all for stopping through to listen here at DuoQ. If you think we might have glossed over something big, feel free to say so in the comments. Don't forget to share and leave a like. Next time you're waiting for a party or searching for a lobby, feel free to tune in again while you wait. See ya!
This expansion was truly a test of our reflexes. Also,